Hey everyone, Dr. Chad Coons here, and today we're going to really dive into the topic, how can I work out my client's back if they're currently suffering from back pain. So I really appreciated the trainer who reached out to me, and actually a few of you had mentioned something quite similar, and the fact that you're dealing with clients' back pain, and yet maybe they've already seen a few physical therapists. Maybe they are still going to see a chiropractor on a weekly basis. Maybe if they've already had the MRIs, and hell, who knows, maybe they've even already had surgery, and yet they're still coming to you because they trust you, they like you. Their doctor keeps telling them, you need to keep working out. And so here you are, right? So it's going to be common because of just how prevalent back pain is. If you think about it, it's really probably $1 trillion industry at this point. You're going to run into it. Life's not always going to be perfect. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? How, as fitness professionals, can we continue to help work these people out in a way that's safe, even if they're struggling to do maybe classic deadlifts, which we know can be a good exercise for their back, but if they're just not there yet, if it's hurting them, we need to figure out another way. So that being said, guys, what I want to point out and just kind of go over real quick, and you see these videos on the left-hand side, we'll tap in that in a second, but I don't want you to lose insight into trying to help them get into a deadlift position. There are varying ways of going about this. This is one with a broomstick, which can give them some good tactile feedback. Sometimes they do need the feedback of being able to feel, in this case, a broomstick or a PVC pipe to keep a really good hip hinge position. Sometimes it could even just be a waiter's bow, where you just really teach them how to bow forwards. And we're not even talking like, the full 90-degree bow, but just teaching people how to bend over a little bit can be incredibly helpful. Or you could always use the tactile feedback of using your butt up against, or their butt up against the wall, and that can kind of let them know a good place to start. So those are just 3 real brief ideas and examples of how you could help them do a hip hinge. I don't know if I'd ever want you to give up on it, because it is a prerequisite in everyday life, not just to do a really good deadlifts. And I know certain people, it's just really tough to get them to be able to do a proper deadlifts, and I get that. So just keep fighting the good fight with that as best as possible. But without further ado, I did want to kind of get into some of these exercises that we were talking about that allow people to do a good workout, even if they struggle to get into a really good hip hinge position. So for my real beginners, if you're just trying to teach them how to do a little bit of a bent over row and keep the weight pretty light, this is just an example for my older clientele. They're not full tilted into a bent over row. There's not too much torque on their low back, and it could be a nice way of just introducing some back exercises. I do think trying to teach people how to appropriately brace and improve their core before they even get into this position would be very helpful. So again, this would be an introductory way to teach over somewhat of a back exercise for those who are beginning into it after they've learned really the proper bracing too. So another exercise that really kind of escapes the need to do a true hip hinge position would be like a standing single arm row. What's nice about this is that it can do an anti-rotation as well. So for those who've had back pain, they're typically weak in the rotary plane. That's usually where the back's almost weakest. I am having to demonstrate proper form and technique here, so just kind of keep that in mind. I think teaching people how to utilize their shoulder blades and scapula is incredibly important for those who've had back pain. Teaching them how to use their upper to middle back and to teach the low back how to stabilize can be pivotal. I wouldn't want you guys to forget about that. Then there's also, this is a classic machine, the seated row. What I'm just kind of walking you through there is I'm showing you the importance of bracing through the core, as if you could teach them that, and that they don't overarch. So sometimes I'll cue them to really just kind of squeeze their chest into the support right in front of them, so that they're kind of getting a crunching moment almost going on. Now what I don't want to see is that. How common is that, right? If you go out and you see traditional people doing those type of rows, And what I'm basically doing is arching at that thoracic lumbar junction. All right, so again, this is the kind of the good form that we're looking for here, where I'm bracing through my core and I'm just squeezing through my shoulder blades, and then that is what we don't want, where you're arching through the, again, the thoracic lumbar junction, and that's a great way to cause people pain when they're trying to work out. That's a little bit of the bro way to do it. You get away with it when you're younger, but as you get older, and if you don't tolerate extension well, if your clients don't tolerate extension well, it's not going to go well. So that's not what we see. We want to make sure that you brace, which you'll hear me say a lot when trying to work with those who have back pain, because what I'm really talking about, you can see how flat my spine is there, or even a little bit curved as I'm reaching, that we're not going to get into too much extension through the lumbar spine. And 9 out of 10 times, guys, we're going to probably want to avoid lumbar extension if they're in pain. I can only speak of my experience in the clientele I work with, but that's a common trend that I've seen. So, and along those lines, this is another type of seated row. You really don't have to be good at a hip hinge at all. I think it's very helpful if you know how to use your shoulder blades and if you can squeeze those together. And as shown here early on is an appropriate way of doing so. And I actually do encourage, as you'll see here, I'm kind of really protracting and almost rounding my upper back. And some people are a little surprised by that, but I actually do encourage that. All right, and when you're getting to the top, ooh, we dipped into the bad motion. When you dip into the top there, I'm holding myself steady. Looks like my spine's pretty vertical there, so that looks fantastic. You might want to go a little bit wider with your foot position if they're struggling with hip mobility. People who have low back pain also have limitations in hip mobility, so you might want to go a little bit wider if they're having back issues. Same idea, right, as we had just seen, and we see this all too often. I'm basically doing a great job of hinging from my thoracic lumbar junction again, and this is a great way to cause pain. So we don't want to do that, guys. All right, so the good news, though, with this one is that, again, it's supported. You can play with the feet position. I don't tend to go into that narrower one as much. I tend to stick a little bit wider because most people don't even have great hip mobility. So if you look, even my starting position from the side, my starting position requires around 90 to 95 degrees of hip mobility, and a lot of people with back pain don't have it. So let them go wide, let the thoracic even round, and let their shoulder blades protract, and then really teach them to squeeze the shoulder blades well, but not do that, okay? All right, so a couple other ones here. Lat pull down, right, can be another great one, but there are various ways to do this, and we want to make sure that we do it the right way. Notice I'm staying pretty upright with my body. I'm getting a little extension through the upper back, and I'm squeezing my shoulder blades, staying quite vertical. But what we don't want to see, same motion, right? So once we learn that we don't need to do this motion, we can just say, hey, don't do that in all of those, and that'll heavily decrease the client's chance of having pain. Or the actual opposite is true. I don't want to see this, and I've seen this a few times, which is horrible, where you're kind of like curling it down and you're doing like an abdominal wannabe exercise. Obviously, what we first showed you is kind of what we want. Chest up, nice and tall. Go ahead and bring it all the way to the chest, and just make sure you're not arching your back. But this, you don't need a hip hinge with that one, so that can be perfectly fine too. So this is a really good way to get the lats going. Not shown, but you could do single arm, okay, which actually is really good to assess your ability to fire that lat on that specific side, which can be correlated to back pain, especially if it's weak. I tend to like a staggered stance. Just make sure in their stance position they're not arched like this. This is pretty wonky, pretty bad in the lower lumbar spine. All right. People feel like they're getting more work out of that sometimes, but it's not the case. So make sure you do a little bit of a posterior tilt. Here we go again. Brace. And really trying to almost flare out wide. I did a good job of showing you there at the very end. Let me go back. Yeah, right there. I'll pause it this time. Right here, I'm really trying to get wide through my shoulder blades, and that's going to be a great way to furthermore contract the lat. So again, the right way, a little bit of a staggered stance, kind of reaching all the way up. Reaching all the way up, pulling it down. Down and around is kind of the cue that I like to give. Make sure they're squeezing the core and we're keeping our bracing going and we're not allowing our low back to extend. Last one that you could do if you're trying to help improve your client's back if they have back pain would be an assisted pull-up machine. Remember, the more weight, the easier it is, so it actually helps them out. There is a right and a wrong way to even do the assisted lat pull-ups. You may not be able to see here, but I'm bracing through my core quite significantly, squeezing my glutes, squeezing my core. So here's the hint, guys. We need to keep tapping into that. Full range of motion is necessary, of course, but what you'll see here in a second, I'm going to defer to what you might commonly see as the typical type of doing lat machine, and that too, again, will cause back pain, right? So I'm overextending, again, hinging in my thoracolumbar junction. So those are some ideas that you guys can try for helping your client work out their back, even if they're suffering from back pain. It's pretty simple, right? If they hinge from the thoracolumbar junction, they're most likely going to have pain because back history shows us 9 out of 10 times or so, they're going to have pain into spinal extension. If you can teach them how to brace their core, truly brace, and not just shouting across the room, hey, tighten your core. If you can truly teach them how to brace their core, get their upper and lower abdominals going, and get their glutes and obliques to tighten up and keep that spine, that canister where you want. A bonus for someone who's clueless to get them to a hip hinge would be huge. I do think we should be fighting the good fight and that you should be able to do that and keep helping them try to do a hip hinge because it's a daily thing. So these are kind of workarounds, and I think that's totally fine in a lot of circumstances where you need to help people just stay active and keep them moving and get them working out. I don't think we should give up on the hip hinge because I think it's that important. But there, as shown, and there are some more, but I wanted to just kind of throw these at you today. I think these are some of the most common ground ways that you could kind of still get them working out. I know how important that is for people's psyche and social output. They connect with you, they want to show up and keep working out, which is fantastic. That's money in your pockets. It is still a business, so we want to keep all those things moving afloat. So yeah, if you guys have any questions on this, let me know. I hope that was helpful, and have a great rest of your day.